All right, guys, so you're wanting to add parallel plots. So here are some things that you can do. Create a link between the plots. And then, so when you link between the plots, you want to have maybe a character connect between the two, somehow have their stories overlap. And then we have the mirror the themes and metaphors. So you can repeat a number of characters in each story. They might have the same main two characters. Repeat the relationship patterns, and that would be, so two different relationships are being described. Maybe your relationship with your mother, maybe your mother's relationship with your father. And so you're talking about relationships and you're telling the stories of your relationship with your mother, but you're also telling your relationship with your mother's relationship with your father. Make key plot points correspond. So if you need to have, you want to synchronize so that they both have the climax happen at the same time. You want to make sure that both plot lines have something dramatic happening around the same time. And use a compatible goal for each storyline. Like what's going to happen. One protagonist wants to set right a mistake or mend a broken relationship, while his companions want to do something else. Where the other protagonist wants to break a curse. And so they both have an overriding positive goal in each of your storylines. Some of the other things that you can do. You can just isolate a chunk, just you're writing your story, and then you just tell a whole nother mini story within a story. That's okay. It seems almost too easy just to break and then start a new story there and then go back to your old story. And it's not necessarily a flashback because it doesn't have to have happened beforehand. It's something that might be happening at the same time, a side story, so to speak. So you're telling a side story. The parallel line is you can write a subplot and it will never interact with the main plot. For example, start your story with the main plot and then kind of get that going first with the cast of characters, your protagonist, and whoever that is. And that's usually you in a narrative. Then insert the beginning of your second plot and switch kind of back and forth between these two stories. You can make your parallel plot short or long, anything that suits you. You also could take the idea that you have plot 1 and then plot 2 talking. Plot 1 and plot 2 and kind of go back and forth. Maybe every other paragraph tells the two plots that are simultaneously happening. You can let your subplots kind of shuttle in and out. For example, if you bring in a new mentor or a new character into the first part of your story, have them give some advice and then have them go away. And then you can switch over to your other plot. And then this is an easy one. Simply write and insert two chunks separately. And so the very beginning you start the second plot line and the very end you wrap up the second plot line. So you don't have to continue it throughout. That might be probably the easiest one to do. So there are a few tips for you on how to try and insert an example would be The Hobbit. And if you can see, there are two stories happening, and we know they're happening at different places. So if you can see where the red line's taking place and where the blue line's taking place, there are events that are happening with the red line and the blue line at the bottom as well on our timeline. So that's just one example of a movie that has simultaneous plot lines. They're telling at least two stories at once. Ideally, you want to figure out what you have in plot A and what you're going to have happening in plot B. And then the way that you insert those would be one of the previous strategies mentioned. So putting in a little in the beginning and a little in the end, breaking the story to tell the second plot line. Maybe it's something in plot A that's happening in English class. And this is what's happening in English class today. And during English class, Mrs. Stevenson wanted us all to do a cartwheel and then stand on our heads. And so while in plot B, people are at lunch. And in the lunchroom, there's a fight. And in the lunchroom, that's going on at the exact same time that in English class, Mrs. Stevenson is asking us to stand on our heads and do cartwheels. So those would be two plots that would be happening, and you could tell them either every other paragraph, a little in the beginning, a little at the end. You could break your whole story and put them in the middle, but maybe start with plot A, this will happen, plot B, this will happen, and then try to see how you can intertwine those in your story.